We will begin with roll call. Kelly.
Kevin Boyles.
Here.
Michelle Brecken.
Here.
TJ Dondelinger.
Here.
Randy Heisman.
Here.
Sarah Spear.
Here.
John Ward.
Here.
Great. And please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Here.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, we will move along to the approval of this evening's agenda as presented. There are no amendments this evening.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
So we have a motion from Director Spear with a second from Director Heidman to approve the agenda as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Public input is next. A member of the public can address the board during this time. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Complaints or allegations against students or employees may not be discussed due to data privacy. Complaints or allegations must be submitted in writing to Superintendent Grant. The Board of Education and Superintendent will not converse with guests to address the topics discussed at this time. And I believe we only have one public input this evening. It'll be Mr. Mark Olson, please.
Mark Olson, 12336 Thompson Road. First thing, if we don't learn from the past, we most definitely will repeat it. I sat at 2 committee meetings last week. Pretty good meetings, I thought. First time I was ever at a committee meeting. I congratulate the board on the resolution that hopefully gets adopted on the cell phone, moving that forward. You heard what I had to say on the cell phone. I think it's fantastic. I think it's going to move people back into the district. But when I said about the past, in the last 7 to 10 years, the oversight has been terrible, in my humble opinion. 181 blueprint wasn't stated very true. The numbers that came out was 205, 235. You're going to be well over 300 million by the time you get done with that. Now, I know there's issues with financing, sat in the finance committee also and listened to that. There's ways to do that without doing a referendum. If you guys think a referendum is going to pass, you're highly mistaken. Look at your tax, and I'm sure you all have. That's a problem. You're constantly levying. There's other ways that you can do this. Obviously, you have a rainy day fund. Tap into that. Try to get the kids back at schools. I think you're doing a great job on the cell phone. I would have preferred it moved in September, but I understand you can't get everything done as quick as you want. So January looks like a good date. If you do things like that to move people through, the community is going to get behind you. But as far as thinking that you're going to push an operating levy, and I know it doesn't say that on here, you're going to direct the superintendent to check out to see how that would go. But in my humble opinion, and it's just one guy, but I talked to numerous people, the referendum in 2018 wasn't as forthright as it should have been. So thanks for listening, and good luck.
Thanks, Bunch.
Thanks, Mark. All right, that concludes public input, so we'll move on to the approval of the minutes from our last meeting on June 10th.
I make a motion we approve June 10th's minutes. I'll second.
So we have a motion from Director Brecken with a second from Director Spear to approve the board meeting minutes from June 10th. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. I'll move on to the consent calendar.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion from Director Spear with a second from Director Brecken to approve the consent calendar as presented. Discussion.
I got something.
Sure.
So, I think it was not last winter, but the winter before. It started out at the college. And so what's happening is kids are calling. What they're doing is they're saying, get your parents, your aunts, uncles, relatives, neighbors, your parents' friends, and give them a call. So we just split everybody up. So next thing I know, the high school's doing it. Like my nephew called me on the hockey team.
This is for fundraising.
This is for fundraising, right? So they're just calling up. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't tell you which one I was talking about.
Yeah.
So they're just calling up and asking for money, which I think is really tacky. I think it's not teaching them anything that they need to be learning. I didn't want the pizzas that I bought from those kids. I didn't want the cookie dough that I bought from those kids. I didn't really want the beef jerky I bought from those kids. But if they got the guts to come up and knock on my door, I'm gonna buy something from them, right? But this crazy train, how did I go with that crazy train word again, it's gotta stop. I talked to Jack about it, and maybe it's out of here. And I don't know that it needs to be addressed in a policy, but I just want everyone to understand what I think. You don't just call up and beg for money. You wanna go shovel the roofs, you wanna do this. I was a little mad about the deal because I support the rink at Forest View. I talked to Quisberg's. You know, they give $10,000 a year to Brainerd Hockey, plus all they do for sports boosters, and now we got 4 different kids called them, just asking for more money. You know, it's not right, and it's not fair to the kids, and it's not fair to the locals. So I think we gotta just make sure that, I would like to think that our board would say that, hey, you have to do something to earn the money. You know, I told the hockey coach back then, I said, hey, it's gonna snow like 5 times this year. I'll pay your kids, I don't remember what I told them, an hour, but I go, if it snows this many times, you guys will make $4,000. I'll gladly do that. So my salesmen don't have to be here at 5 o'clock in the morning to do that stuff. And do you think there's any takers? No. Which I understand, but I wasn't expecting them to do it. But I'd like to see a little bit of effort put in return for the money that they raise, without just calling up asking for money.
How did they get payment when they, because I've never had anybody call.
Well, so they had to do a credit card.
Oh,
And
Okay.
it went through the people that were promoting this. So me being me, and it was my nephew, I told him, go up, I wanna know how much the team gets. If I give you $100, how much does the team get? Guess how much the team gets? $80. But you can give a check. So the hockey coach was smart enough to know what I was doing. So he called me back. He said, you can just drop a check off. And it was like, you know.
you
so-
drop a check off.
Yeah, so if you didn't use your credit card, then the people that were teaching them, they bring them in a room, they coach them up on what to say, give them scripts, and then all these little kids, or big kids, or whatever kids, get on the telephones and call their parents' friends, and it's just, I just thought it was just ridiculous, and I saw we had a policy on it, and so, I don't know it needs to be part of the policy, but I think it needs to be stated that we can't just be out begging for money. I think there's a lot of it going on. I just think that you should offer something in return. You know, the football kids, I don't know, what do they have, that gold card or blue card or whatever that card is. You know, I saw those guys coming down my driveway. I just walked right out in the driveway and I liked them so much, I bought one from each of them. They were doing it as a team, you know, 2 of them. And I don't know what I did with the cards. I never used them, I can tell you that much. But at least someone was learning something, learning skills, learning eye contact, learning to get over your fears and, you know, talk to somebody. You know, I think it's good for them.
I think that's one of those horses that maybe people fell off during COVID. So, you know,
Maybe,
you didn't do it and then people forgot to go back to doing it.
well,
As a traditionalist, I know that my little bicycle and Cub Scout uniform struck fear into the hearts of rural pillager when they saw me coming up their driveway. They knew I was selling something.
well, you know what, we'll just leave them unnamed, but someone told me from the school that's in charge, said that a lot of people are like, I don't want the cookie dough. I don't want the beef jerky. You know, me being me, I'm like, well, then just give them the money. I'm pretty positive they're not gonna like tell you, I can't take it if you don't take the beef jerky. Or those pizzas or whatever they're selling, you know? So I think it's good for those kids to be out doing that, and that it seems like it went away last year. Like, I don't remember it happening this past winter. I mean, it was the CLC basketball girls. That's where it started. Funny part about it is, my brother-in-law, my nephew's dad, He came to me just furious about the whole deal, right? Well, then it's a week later, 2 weeks later, I'm like, hey, buddy, your kid's doing it too. Like it wasn't, I don't think it left a very good taste in people's mouths, so we should get away from that business. But that's all I got to say. So,
Randy, or DJ, I will tell you this, it's universal across the state of Minnesota.
that,
This operations of raising money, it used to be service directed. And then it became the punch card or, you know,
right,
subway card or a pamphlet or
discount here
something.
and there, yeah.
And I'm just gonna say how it is, from my perspective, whoever publishes those cards weren't making enough money. So they had to come up with another gimmick of how do we make this work.
Oh, really?
And that's why they went to the phone. I don't have an answer to it. I know that as a parent and a coach and school administrator and so forth, I detested begging for money from the kids. But it's kind of the norm today. I don't know what the solution really is, but I do agree with you that it should be more than just panhandling.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of what it is. And kids should not be used that way at all, I don't believe. But clubs and everything, they need fundraising. And I don't think they have found the golden
Ticket.
ticket to make it work. But I don't like it when kids are used to panhandle. Because that, I don't think they learn anything from it personally, other than be either rejected or you give them cash and say, keep the card, and they go, but we have to sell so many cards. So it's a lose-lose proposition for either the consumer or for the seller, one of the two.
Some of those kids might just put it in their pocket too, take a card.
Well, I know if John and I were to eat from the menu of these cards, we would be seeing our cardiologists a lot more often. Some of the, at least the one card that I bought had was a gas coupon that lasted for 6 or 7 months. But I mean, I just saw on Facebook today the Warrior Little Falls girls hockey team starting to raise funds.
Are they?
Yeah.
Well, they need it, and I
Yeah.
think it's a fine deal. I just didn't care for you need to do something, even if you just walked in the door and said, did you help our team out? A lot better than just calling on the telephone at 8 o'clock at night.
Is this something we want to remove from the consent agenda and take back to policy committee, or do we want to pass as is? And
I don't think it needs to be the
Come back
policy,
to it.
does it?
We could certainly review it without
I've
having to
read
take
the
formal
policy.
board action. I'd be honest, I have never delved that deeply into the minutia of that particular policy.
I just read it, and I don't think it needs to go I don't know if we need to change the policy,
Okay, you were just trying to,
a board-driven policy. I'd just like to see the attitude of the school take the high road thing. If it doesn't get fixed, I guess we can change it later. I'm fine with voting for it, that's for sure.
I just have another comment too, as I was reviewing the agenda. And it's along the lines of student fundraising, and Peter, you may not know the answer to this, but are there systems in place in collecting these funds that it's being managed or monitored or accounted for? I've had personal experience in a district where just one adult was collecting the funds, and it was questionable whether or not all those funds were.
Almost all of these are not school related.
Oh, okay,
The school district is not involved specifically.
okay,
So you have all these clubs, which I understand,
okay.
and they
got
come
it.
up to generate money for football, basketball, wrestling, track, dance, whatever it is. And it's generated by the booster clubs. And so those monies are exterior of the reach of the district. They can pretty much determine where those funds are going to be spent and how and so forth. And that's why it is a really battle. A lot of communities have gone to one major fundraiser for the entire activity program, where there might be a major golf outing, and there might be a major raffle party or silent auction and so forth. All the proceeds go to student activities. And then the school does have control of it. But otherwise, you're at the will of, anybody selling a product that they think they can help fund. But there's always a, like DJ said, you know, you raise 100, oh, you only get 80. I mean, that's the good and the bad and the ugly of it all.
And a lot of the stuff that they raise the money for, the way I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, Peter, but let's just say that it's the football foundation. So that could be so that they get to ride in coach buses instead of regular school buses. Or they say, well, we gotta play Rochester now, so those kids need dinner, right? We don't have that budgeted for the football team, the way I get it.
Right.
Or after the game, they feed them, or that's what they use this money for. And maybe buy new jerseys or something for the hockey, some smaller teams, you know, the big teams, it's pretty hard to buy new jerseys for a football team, it's like 100 of them. But, so, yeah, I understand.
This is kind of weird as a committee topic, because it kind of rests kind of partway between policy and partway between like community,
Right.
right? Who's on community? I can't remember.
Community relations?
Emery?
Community relations
Yeah.
is policy.
Well, that's
We're
me.
policy and community relations, yeah.
Yeah, maybe we should look at that. So it isn't the same policy, never mind, it doesn't cross two, it's the same. We have two names on the committee, I guess we should invoke the other name. For some weird reason, we've been spending a lot of time on policy. So maybe we should take a look at that, you know, just,
Well, where did this policy come up? Did it come up in?
it's just up
your
for its
guys'-
normal, it was up for its normal cycle
Oh,
of
okay.
of renewal, and then if there's no
Okay.
redlining or anything like that, we throw them in the consent agenda, you know, in theory to save time.
In theory.
So does anybody object to the idea of just, us taking a look at this through the community lens on that committee, just for giggles? Okay, well, we can do that and we can report back. Any other discussion on the motion?
I got one. John, did you go through the discipline matrix though?
The what?
That discipline matrix, did you look at that?
No.
Well, there we go, me making the meeting take longer again, sorry.
Yeah.
Jeez,
You're
what's
so
wrong with me?
efficient.
I don't know about that, but, well, I'm looking at these managed behaviors. And minor is pushing, shoving, kicking, impulsive actions, and loss of self-control. I just don't know if those are minor infections. I think kicking, I mean, I understand if a first grader, two first graders get in a little spat out in the playground and one kicks the other one, I don't think we're gonna be doing anything, but if somebody kicked a teacher, or if it's somebody that's 14, 15 years old and big and tough and young and strong and starts kicking people, or is this thing just kind of a guide? Where we take things and, you know, principals and teachers and stuff make the decision whether it's major or minor. Because I just don't know what it takes to be major. Well, there's a list, I could read them. You know, it just seems to me like shoving, and who are you shoving? If it's, you know, like we all grew up and went through school. The shoving matches happen at basketball practice, you know, baseball practice, it happens. I don't think that's a major offense, but start shoving adults, things like that, I would hope would go into the major examples. I do see threats of violence, sexual harassment, racial harassment, bullying, cheating. I don't know, I was curious if you saw it, John, because I know you're kind of concerned about this.
Yep.
I am too.
We did talk about that in a policy committee meeting.
It's been a while.
I think.
Did you ask some
I
really
think-
good questions about it?
Yeah, I think Director Ross was the individual who brought it to a policy committee meeting I'm not sure, a couple months ago maybe. So it's fairly new.
Is it freshened up?
It's fairly new and, you know, maybe we can send that back to the policy.
Well, I mean, it's
I
here
don't
today
know.
because we did that discussion a few months ago or a few meetings ago, is that right? Do I remember that right, Director Ross? Any other, right? Because I think Director Heidman had some concerns about the way the original matrix was, and we adjusted it based on that dialogue that we had back at that meeting, if I remember correctly. Now I wouldn't take the over on that bet, just for the record, but.
Is this procedure or is it attached to the policy?
I don't know, it's a separate thing.
This is a separate,
Behavioral matrix.
yeah, it's a separate, because we didn't, like, again, a lot of our policies, we don't like to have to rewrite them if we have an addendum. And I think this was an addendum, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yep, that is correct, Director Hyben. This is a procedure that's attached to policy 506 at your request that gives a guidance to staff. It doesn't list every possible outcome of a behavior. We are working currently with admin and staff to identify what is disruptive behavior and what constitutes an opportunity for relearning and what constitutes an opportunity for immediate intervention. There's all kinds of degrees for that. Why you're seeing it in your packet today is because we added some language to include our collaborative workers and some other folks that were not previously listed on the matrix as people that could provide additional support for students when they need opportunities for relearning or talking to somebody about a situation that they're having. There's not going to be a matrix that we can provide you that would list every possible example. And sometimes something starts out minor and it becomes major, or vice versa. It's very situational. It's part of what we do is understanding our students and having relationships with our students. And our staff will get more information about this in our back to school welcome with Superintendent Grant this fall. And they'll have ongoing learning with the behavior matrix as part of our MTSS plan, and there'll be a special emphasis on bullying this year. So that those are already in the works based on the guidance that you have provided us in our last few meetings and at the board retreat.
So is this essentially the same?
Essentially the same, just a few minor wording changes so that we can include our collaborative workers and our school counselors and some of the essential supports that were missing in the first iteration.
But I think to Director Dondlinger's point, when I reread this now outside of the committee structure, it seems presumptively student to student in terms of what it's defining, right? I mean, that's kind of how I read it. And then what you're saying is you have concerns about student behavior towards staff.
I just think that if
I mean, I think we all have
we
those
can
concerns.
continue to make strides in student behavior, you'll have happier, smarter kids coming out of the school, and I think you'll have less defections, if you're gonna call it, deserters, moving to homeschool, going to online schools, wherever they're going. There's a lot of competition out there. So if we could make it a better environment, where if you're intimidated by somebody, we can get that person under control so that 3 kids in the class can learn, because they're so afraid that they're gonna be the one today that's gonna get it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think that it was probably way too harsh, especially back when Randy and John went to school. My God, I mean, I can't imagine what they did to those guys.
Well,
Young guys
had-
like us, Kevin, we came out
they had
okay.
muzzle loaders back then, so
yeah.
it wasn't as dangerous.
But I
from that
think that it went, that was too strict. And then I think maybe, this is just my opinion, I don't know that much about it, I'm not an educator, obviously, but all of a sudden it got to be a little bit lopsided the other way. And we kind of need to come back to a center where there are consequences for what your actions, but yet we're not gonna have them drop them in the principal's office, we get, you know what I'm saying? So I just wanna make sure we're kind of striding that way a little bit, I don't think we're just gonna snap our fingers and fix this, but it'd be nice to think that we're starting to make some headway and make it a better working environment for our paras, teachers, administrators. I just think it should be a fun place to work.
Yeah, absolutely, and we want it to be a well-balanced learning environment for everybody, absolutely.
Yeah.
Policy 506, if you remember, excuse me, was rewritten this year. MSBA gave us a new draft. It was attended to in the legislature, and it ended up to be something like 20 pages long. So we gave you this matrix as a summary document from the 20-some pages that it was.
Yeah.
So much like we're talking about with other policy tonight, maybe this is an opportunity for us to dig into the existing policy we have and be more intentional about what does that mean for student behavior in terms of student to student, student to adults, definitions of bullying, other aspects of some of the things that contribute to a learning environment. It already exists. We just have not done a whole lot with it because it was so new last spring.
I feel like this document, it just basically identifies the various types of behaviors that can be exhibited. It does not go dig deep into consequences because we trust the staff to manage those misbehaviors. So I don't think it's probably our place to really identify what they should do with various misbehaviors. This is just a guide to be able to decide, okay, is this a major or a minor? And based on what the staff determines that behavior to be, and kicking could definitely be a major, even though it's listed as minor. I mean, I think we have to just trust that the staff will make the best decisions that they're.
Half of these actions are subjective.
They're all
what they are.
subjective, I mean, yeah.
Like you said, where did they kick them, how hard did they kick them, and who did
Yeah,
they kick?
yeah.
And how many times, you
Well,
know?
so here,
This is just a guide.
here's my devil's advocate to that.
Okay.
All right, is you put out a list. So we don't talk about my kids kicking anybody because they're done with school, okay? But my kid kicked somebody. Well, we didn't know that it broke his leg. And then he did a flipping Karate Kid chop on him and beat him up pretty good, right? And kicked him. So I'm gonna say, hey, it's right here. I mean, I'm wondering why we even have this list. It's right here. It says right here, kicking, minor offense. What are you doing suspending my kid? Like, we're just asking for trouble with this list. I'm with you. I think that you guys are plenty capable of deciding what's major and what's minor. But when you put out a list, you put out a list.
Let me just go to shoving. So you shove, one student shoves another, and, you know, I didn't like it. One student shoves another and falls down, okay? But what happens if a student shoves another student down a flight of stairs? It's still a shove. But the consequences that have to be determined is how far did that repercussion go to bodily injury and so forth, and then you ramp up consequences. So it is a guideline to address, especially with younger kids, you know, a shove is a shove. I mean, it could be playing basketball on the playground.
Right.
So you have to determine, and I would like to think that as educators, we are smart enough to figure out
I figured
the
you are.
degree of consequence is gonna be from a shove, playing a dodgeball, whatever, to I shoved a kid down the stairs, and there was significant accountability for what happened to that other student. So, I mean, you just have to trust that the
I trust.
people in the classroom and in the administration are gonna make the right decisions on how far does that consequence gonna carry.
Well, that's the problem, quite frankly. And I was gonna save my comments till updates, director updates, but I'm not gonna save it until then. I don't know if any of you have watched, I put out an email to all of us. I don't know if you've watched the movie about Joe Kelly. Joe Kelly had a son that was brutally bullied in school, and it drove him to suicide. And Joe Kelly was his father, and walked across the nation and talked about bullying to anybody that would listen, and what we can do about bullying. Joe Kelly, in his walk across the nation, got killed and hit by as he was walking, got killed. It's an unbelievable documentary drama film about bullying. Now, I know of at least one student in this district that has been significantly bullied to the point of mental health issues big time. And that's why I said I want to see some zero tolerance in bullying, zero tolerance, period. And I don't want to see anybody saying those kids are just feeling bad about themselves and picking on other kids. Bull crap. If there is bullying existing, that person, he or she, needs to be gone. And then they shouldn't return until the parents come in and say, okay, this will never happen again. That's what I want to see. Because I think that's why we lose kids. when they're afraid to come to the school, when they're afraid to sit in a class, when they're afraid to walk down the halls,
could be
when they're
part of our
afraid to sit in the
truancy problem.
cafeteria, when they're afraid to go into the homeroom, period.
Could be part of our truancy problems. Kids just don't wanna go, they're scared to go.
So we have to address bullying, my friends, big time. And it isn't just, it's a nationwide kind of deal. But, so, I mean, it's like COVID. We blame everything on COVID. Okay, it's bull crap. What can we do here to make sure that our kids are welcomed and safe, and respected and appreciated and included? You know, when we talk about inclusion, that doesn't mean just inviting people to the table. That means understanding that they belong at the table. That's what inclusion is. Inclusion is accepting everybody and feeling like they belong, not just come on and sit. And I'm getting out of the soapbox, I'm sorry, but this is really significant in my opinion. So I'm hoping that we have some kind of a solution by the beginning of the school year about bullying. Administratively, yes, we have to deal with that. But I know that there are kids that are uncomfortable and that have left because of that. Period. And let's try to turn that around. Let's try to say, you know what, we have a zero tolerance of bullying here, and we're going to deal with it. Deal with it. And sometimes you get kickback from the parents. I understand all of that as well. But I was going to save that until later, but I didn't, obviously. Obviously. And by the way, the other thing about student fundraising, I was going to keep my mouth shut about that too, but I'm not.
Put a quarter in them, look what happens, Michelle.
Student fundraising is happening because we haven't done the job. We haven't done the job. Not us, not we, all of us. You got Thief River elementary students doing fundraising to keep their classroom sizes down.
Can you believe that?
That's the fact. That's the fact. It's in the media. It's elementary students, and I know we shouldn't be using students. We shouldn't be using students. But when the kids are saying, we want and need something, people better start listening. People better start listening. And as a coach, as a former coach, everything's getting more expensive, and when you have the athletic programs or the academic program, I mean the clubs, the organizations, the extra co-curriculars that you want to have to provide a well-rounded education for these children, for these young people, it costs money. And if we have only so much money, then we got to tap back to the community. I don't agree with Mr. Olson that we won't pass an operating levy. I think we show the need and we get community support. That's what I think. And that's why I'm on this board. So I want to bring out those two things. I'm done for now. Thank you.
Anything else on the matrix I can help you with?
Watch Joe Kelly's film, by the way.
Well, I
All of
think,
you.
yeah, I think this was, like you had mentioned, Director Ross, this was just a bringing to fruition so we could see what this massive piece of legislation was passed and what we need to look at in a flow chart. I thought initially it was a great idea. I still think it is. Now, if we need to do something as far as student to teacher, then let's have at it.
Well, one recommendation I would offer is we could bring 506 back to the policy committee and revisit some of the language that is already existing in 506 that talks about some of the scenarios that you brought up tonight, to see if you're comfortable with.
Yeah, I would see no reason not to do that. What I would say is on that one, and really on bullying too, I haven't been all the way into the depths of that one, but there's if you want to think of it in terms of government, right? There's a legislative layer and then there's an enforcement layer.
Correct.
And a policy layer, right? So our policy is our legislation, so the terminology is a little different, right? But I suspect we probably have all the words in the policies that we need. What we need to do is what we're doing tonight with the cell phone thing, which is giving a direction on how we want that policy implemented and enforced.
Sure.
Because there's a difference between, you know, how many times do you hear it? We don't need more laws, we need people to enforce the laws that we have. And so let's, before we get too crazy and start cracking open more policies, we should look at the policies we have, and then, and that also gives the professionals the latitude to do their day-to-day work and intervene and do the things that they need to do with board direction. You know, that's kind of my take on it.
Well, we'd
Well,
be,
to DJ's point too about teacher, assaulting a teacher or bullying a teacher or whatever, physically harming a teacher. I mean, there's, that could be considered a criminal offense as well. That could be a criminal offense, but it could be the same for a child as well. And, I just think we need to look at all of that.
So what do you suggest, John? Do we vote on this, or do you want to take it back to
No,
policy?
we need to vote on this because the MSBA has asked us to update our policies and things as such or whatever.
and we can do it again at the policy committee.
I mean, there's no burning need that this has to, we can pull this out and send it back to committee if you want to, and then we can take another
I
look
don't
at
know
it.
that we need to.
We have a meeting in a week and a half.
I'm a little confused.
Well, this is just for the matrix, correct? The
Right.
policy
Yeah.
isn't actually on here, so
Policy
you
hasn't
could bring the
changed yet.
policy
Right.
back.
Yeah.
And approve the matrix.
I mean, to your original point, DJ, I mean, you know, kicking, you know, it's like hockey, right? What's a 2-minute, what's a 5-minute? Those are always gonna be judgment calls,
I realize it's
right?
judgment calls, yep.
Well, yeah, in some cases, but in some cases, it's pretty clear cut.
Well, it is.
Well, but I'm saying if you walk up
You draw
and-
blood, I
and,
mean, you're gonna be sitting in the locker room for the rest of the night probably.
my point is that a parent or a child can't walk up, kick another kid in a way that that child is on the ground for 10 minutes, writhing on the ground, then come back and go, it's a minor based on your chart. I don't think that's gonna fly, you know.
It's not how it works.
Well, if any of you have been into Forest View during, lunch hours, those kids are just running down the hallways. I mean, there's gonna be kids crashing and burning, into each other. I mean, it's just,
Well, I had
It
an actual
happens.
scenario where this happened to my middle son, where he was kicked by another student when I lived in California and he was in middle school. So my wife went to the administrator.
Oh, yeah.
They wouldn't tell her what they did from a discipline perspective. It was all private.
Data
So I
privacy.
looked up the California statute on assault. And I walked into the administrator and said, here's the California statute for assault. You can tell me or you can tell the police. I'm gonna file a complaint. And suddenly some new information came to light that I had access to. So I think to the extent that we let the professionals do their jobs, and let them know that we'll back them when they do the right thing. But then to John's point, you know, there've gotta be repercussions and consequences. But I don't think that's driven by policy, that's driven by procedure and implementation.
Exactly. And it's an attempt to make our schools welcoming, safe, inviting, positive, period.
And I think if we, you know, I think if we don't speak up as board members about these kinds of things for the direction, I think that the professionals don't really know the direction that we want them to go. And we're the ones that are elected, and that's what we're here for, is to help direct the superintendent, right? Isn't that our main job?
Yep.
So if we don't ever let them know what we're thinking, other than one at a time, I think that we're doing them a disservice, and our students, and our parents, and ourselves. So, there you go.
I think you're exactly right. I mean, I think we're the first and last line of defense. And so we talked about this last week in the policy committee meeting. I mean, that's really what this resolution tonight about cell phones is about, is the board saying with one voice, we don't
Enforce the
have a new
policy.
policy yet, but we have existing handbook language, and we're telling you as administrators, as teachers, as paras, as other workers in our schools, enforce it. And if somebody wants to have a problem with that, they can call me. They can call him. They can call you. They can call you, and you know what they're gonna hear? The same thing from every one of us. There's a power in that you can't dispute. That's consistency, as Peter has preached since he came in to meet with us before before the ink was done on his contract.
Yep.
And I think you can do the same, where I was going with that is you can do the same with these other things too. Which you can say, we already have these things, we have to identify, and then the staff knows where they stand and they know somebody's got their back. They aren't just dangling out there with an angry parent by themselves to get chewed up.
And I think also if it need be, if some of the board members, if we need to be in the high school, first week of school, I'll be there.
And we can get specific on the cell phone
Retired
stuff.
guys, let's just sign up the retired guys. Peter, get it on your list. Those two right there. Well, this one too. This one over here is retired too, I think, aren't you, Michelle?
Kind of.
She's the K-9 unit. Should bring Rosie in.
I just want to make sure
I'll
that
do that.
everybody knows we are in the schools. We've been in the schools, so.
No, I think
But I'm
those are,
talking about for this.
good-
you
good
know,
discussion.
You know what we're talking about.
all right, so,
So
where are
we
we
got
at
first
then with
and a
506
second.
matrix? Do you want it to go back to committee, or are we okay with it as is?
I'm okay with
okay
it
with
as is.
I'm okay with it too.
All right, then, is there any further discussion on the consent calendar as a whole? Thank you, Director Ross. Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, everybody. Good discussion. All right, we will amble along to new business. We'll start with our first action item for tonight, which is the approval of the administration recommendation to issue a 2024-2025 contract to the following certified staff members that was missed during last month when we were doing a larger number of them, resulting in the granting of tenure. The two staff members in question here are Hannah Anthony and Mary, oh goodness, I'll probably kill this, Piawasit. That's how I would have said it, yay. So yeah, we want to approve that.
I'll move.
Second.
So we have a motion from Director Ward with a second from Director Heidman for the approval of tenure, granting of tenure. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor, please?
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Hearing none, motion passes. Next up is the approval of, this is the Angie Bennett section of the agenda. So first, we'll start with the ratification of the head cook's benefit and compensation handbook for 24-25 and 25-26.
Yes, good evening.
Oh, yeah.
I'm good, how are you? Good. So we have 3 handbooks. We reviewed a few also last board meeting. So same process was used for these 3 groups where we invited them in, have a discussion about some proposed changes to their handbook, sent out a survey to see what they're looking for with an increase in their handbooks, to see if there was anything that we were missing, get some input from them. So we had groups come in at varying levels. Summertime is a little bit more difficult to get head cooks in, and the community education folks, but we did have some representation from all of them. So with head cooks specifically, the biggest change I think was kind of normalizing the wage scale. So long time ago, they used to be a union with food service. They broke away from the union, but really kind of still acted like a union. And so negotiations, it was really with the district very much like a union. So everybody was on the bottom step, so they wanted all the increase on the bottom step. Well, that has skewed our whole salary schedule. So as folks are retiring, we're not going to be able to recruit and retain newer staff. And so we kind of did some normalization there. The bottom step was also out of market. So we always do a market analysis with 3 districts that are smaller than us, 3 that are larger than us, see what they do and see where we're at to make sure that we're still being competitive. So we kind of gave a less increase on that bottom step because we don't want to continue getting out of market. To kind of offset and still acknowledge the longevity, we did some adjustments to the longevity scale instead. So the longer you stay, you get a little bit of a bump instead of adding it to a salary scale where you get a percentage increase, if that makes sense. And then just realign personal time and ESST language. So pretty basic for head cooks.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion from Director Dondelinger with a second from Director Brecken to approve the head cook's contract, or excuse me, handbook.
Yep.
Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next up, we have the Community Education Child Care Workers Benefit Compensation Handbook language for the same periods.
Yep, so again, in the efforts to make things more clean and clear for everybody, the last handbook had a separation for childcare workers that work in Fun and Friends versus pre-K workers. They had 2 salary scales. Became very cumbersome because a lot of times they'll start crossing over where they're doing some Fun and Friends, some pre-K workers. So what we did was we combined So we have one salary scale for 3 different types. So we're doing a little bit of a restructure where we're going to, instead of like pre-K room leads, we're going to have assistant site supervisors, and the site supervisors very similar to what we have in Fun and Friends. So we just kind of cleaned up all that stuff, added ESST, and then, yeah, that's about it. And then the salary adjustments kind of based on our budget for that.
I'll move approval.
Second.
So we have a motion from Director Ward with a second from Director Donlinger to approve as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor, please.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And the third in the trilogy, the approval of the ratification for technology and specialist, same period.
Yeah, again, very minimal changes on this one. It was basically language cleanup. We removed the network administrator position as, if you can remember, a couple years ago, we had, when Ryan kind of moved into a new role, he was the network administrator. We're not planning to refill that, so we took that out of the handbook and then just updated the salary scale, cleaned up some language, and added ESST. So that was about it. Not a whole lot on that one.
Motion.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion from Director Donlinger with a second from Director Brecken to approve as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor, please.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
And that
Director
is the end
Bennett.
of our handbook. So now we have 3 more union contracts lingering, so hopefully within the next month, those will be done. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Angie.
All right, approval to direct administration to research consulting firms for referendum survey. Mr. Grant.
So, Marcy and I haven't had a lot to share about it, but in Minnesota, there's really just 2 major ones that do very, very well. One of them I've had experience with. I told Marcy earlier today that during the time I was at Owatonna and we passed a levy and a bond back to back, almost. We used the same company, and unbelievably, I mean, I kind of have I don't know if I trust them or not. You know, when you hear a 3% margin of plus or minus, they both surveys came in within 2% of accuracy of where we should go for how much money that the public would support. And we were astonished that they were so accurate. So I think Marcy and I can talk to both of them. I mean, there's probably one more, but I wouldn't trust them very far if I could help it. But if you give us the direction, we'll go immediately into start talking to them and find out. They come and see us. What is their proposal? I mean, it's going to cost you money. That's the way it goes. But if you want the accuracy of what a survey is going to do to go into this next stage for the financial operation of the district, you have to do the survey. And it covers a large swath of information. It isn't just about money. You know, they talk about, you know, how do you feel about the district? Do you trust them? What are some things that you would like to see different? Or do you have kids in school? You don't have kids in school. Did you ever have kids in school? How long have you been in the community? It covers a large area so that you can get a real grasp of how the consensus is drawn. And they don't survey 30,000 people. They'll probably do, if there's, I don't know how many in the district, 40,000 maybe, 35? They'll probably do 1,800 people to get the information they want. And then they say, well, based on what we know, this is how we can guide you into believing this is where you can go, this is where you don't want to go. In my experience, they would say, if you want X amount of dollars, here's the support we think you'll get. If you go a little bit higher, the support goes this way. And if you go across that threshold, that says you're not going to get a positive vote. Really simple, really, but they have to find out through talking. It's about a 15 or 20-minute interview on the phone. They need to be able to get people to agree, first of all, to participate. And then they go through the questioning. And sometimes they might go, well, this question didn't work for that person. What about this question then? And then at the end, it's always open comment. You know, do you want to say something specifically about the district? And then they'll jot all that down. They put the matrix together of all the responses, and they tell you exactly where every question fell into the feeling of those people that they interviewed. And they're surprisingly incredibly accurate about where you're at, where you stand, and where you should go and where you should not go. Where you should not go is probably more important, because you want a yes vote versus a loss. Because when you lose, it's a regroup. That's not much fun.
How much do these companies cost?
Depending on the size of the district, Owatonna, I think it was about 12 grand. It was a city of 25,000 people. I don't know where their rates are today compared to
I'm sure they're higher.
2016. Oh yeah, they're not gonna be
No, they're not gonna
lower.
be lower.
They won't be lower, but sometimes you can bargain with them depending on how much work you want them to do. Because there'll be a large scope of things they'll say they can offer, and you just kind of, well, we don't really, let's do this, let's do that. Because it's important data, but you don't want to cut off your arm to get it, so to speak.
So Superintendent Grant, did you look at a couple different companies? Or, and how were they price comparison and service comparison?
Really, to be honest with you, John, service was more important than cost. We wanted really good service. We wanted them to be us. We didn't want them to be an outside entity coming in and everybody goes, who's this?
Yeah.
So the company we chose, we felt, first of all, had a great track record, on service. And then they would adjust their prices according to what you wanted them to specifically do. The other company, I thought, they were more about collecting their paycheck. Although their data was good, but I didn't feel their service was nearly as personable. You go buy a car, right?
It's the whole game.
That's
On
right.
every corner, you can buy them all over the place.
Yep.
So you haven't really actively done this now?
No, this
Done
vote
what's
is to,
past history.
this is from the retreat, right?
This is
To
for
have an
us
actual
to-
board
to
action to
ask you
empower
what-
them
Go
to
get some estimates.
gather
and-
proposals.
And everything has to be approved by you.
I know. So it always
And we could
works
have them come and talk to you. Probably will,
at the end.
yeah.
But the supposition is that you and your team will come forward with a recommendation.
Right.
Right?
Yep,
A recommendation of what company to go with.
right.
Yeah, okay,
I'll
But they
move that
still
we-
need to present to you what they're gonna do.
okay.
Because if you don't like what you hear, you don't want them.
I'll move that we direct administration to research consulting firms for a referendum survey.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion from Director Ward with a second from Director Spear to approve Mr. Grant and team to begin the vetting and search for a consulting firm.
Do we, excuse me, Mr. Chair, do we need a timeline at all?
Oh, that's a great point.
Yeah. Well, you can tell us after that isn't really part of your motion, but
No, I know.
you can tell us
I can
anytime.
amend the motion, no, that's why I'm asking.
Doesn't take very long to, get an
Do you need-
answer. Let's put it that way.
Do we need time? Do we need-
Probably a month, to make sure we're asking the right questions, getting the right information, and then present it to you, yeah. So I would say the end of the month, we can have an answer for you.
Okay,
So the August 12th board meeting?
Sure.
Why do we even need a motion for them to go shop around?
Well, because you're asking us to
Spending
spend your money.
spending money.
But we're not spending
We're
any
not
yet.
spending any
Well,
money right now, though, are we?
No, but I mean, that's the core of the plan is you go find somebody and we'll approve it. We really do need your direction to say, go ahead and do it.
It primarily though, DJ, it was because we had this discussion in the retreat format where the six of us discussed having them do it. And had he gone and done it, one could make the argument that we took a board action in that retreat, which
Can't
wouldn't
do
be
it.
legal.
Right.
So by doing it this way, we legalize it by saying that we talked about this at the retreat. We're actually taking a board action to compel or request that they go do it.
It's fine, I don't.
It's dotting an I if
I
you
don't
want to think of
think
it that way.
I mean, the retreat was an open meeting, so I don't think.
Yeah, I mean.
It was, but we can't do motions and
We didn't
do
do a
votes.
motion,
We
they're
did
just
we
gonna vote.
counted noses at that
Fine.
thing.
I mean, I
So
just,
now we're formally counting noses to do what we did at the retreat and just make it formal. To your point, they could have gone and done all the homework and he could have presented it as his own agenda item without even telling us ahead of time, but based on how this went.
That's not really that's not a good way to go.
Agreed. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. Oh, go ahead.
I guess the deal with me is, from the retreat, what made me the most excited about this, because I don't think a referendum will pass. I think people's property taxes, home insurance, car insurance, gas, heating has gone crazy, and I don't think they've got the extra money. Plus, there's still a little bit of a taste in their mouth from the last 200 million. But I was more intrigued with when Peter said that we're gonna learn all about the reasons that people are in the school, people are not at the school, what they think about us as a school, and I think that information can be really valuable. So I guess I'd be happy with doing it, but I'm doing it for different purposes than other people.
That's what we call a win-win, because I'm after all of the data, because I don't know that I feel as strongly against what you're saying or for what you're saying. That's why you hire experts to get you that information. What I do know is I don't like the idea of perpetually punishing the next 6,200 kids that come through this district for whatever was done in 2015 and 16.
Well, that's true. None of us were here.
And
Correct.
or board members.
That's yesterday. Yesterday doesn't pay the bills today. Yesterday doesn't teach kids today. I think, in fact, we had a public comment tonight said doing the same thing.
But here's
Basically,
the deal, Kevin, we can't erase it. So maybe it wasn't our fault, but it's still there, and it's a 40-year note. So the people that,
understood?
they
Just saying
stepped up, we said we needed more room.
Yep, but every car on your lot has a smaller rear view mirror than a windshield for a reason. Looking forward's more important than looking behind.
True.
We gotta do both.
Yep. You have to go.
All right, any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, next up are Marcy Lord and Reed Teesey with the LTFM report, 10-year plan.
Yeah, because I was in the meeting room at all.
So
Well, I think that has two, but-
in your board packet are the 2 required forms from MDE for our LTFM plan. And this was reviewed by the Finance Committee, just an FYI. The first report is our revenues for the year and for the following 10 years. So on line 6, I do adjust the adjusted pupil units. And then beyond that, the only change is what we talked about at the school board retreat. Now we do qualify for the 1A funding. So on line 26, you'll now see a new amount in fiscal year 26. So when we send this off to MDE, they will recognize that and get that onto our levy. So that's the revenue report. And then the other document is the expenses, which is a summary of all our projected expenses, which comes from Reed has more of a detail of all the projects that we have planned, and then I summarize it onto this document. And there's all sorts of finance codes and requirements by MD of how we break out those projects, but this is just a summary.
Marcy, this is the summary, the
Yep.
MD, okay.
That easy little summary.
Yeah, yeah.
I know. Like I said, these are MDE forms, which we're required to send to
Okay.
them once you guys approve them.
Okay,
And then the very bottom does summarize our fund balance. You'll see in the Fund 1 that pretty much after 2026, whatever our projects are is what we can levy. And I know, Sarah, you expressed some concern at the school board retreat. So then next year, we'll update this plan again, and we'll fine tune 27 and keep going. So it's a 10-year plan, but it gets reviewed every year.
The only set in stone year that you're gonna look at is the next fiscal year. That's the only thing set in stone. Any years after that, the 9 following are up for adjustment as we go through the school year. Our priorities may change, projects may pop up, they may elevate to the surface because a roof leak or a parking lot degradation or whatever it might be, and we'll move those projects around on those 9 years to balance out that budget.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
We have a motion from Director Donlinger with a second from Director Ward to approve the maintenance plan as presented. Further discussion? I mean, I'll be the first one to admit these things are pretty complicated, but since the motion was made by the, by two guys that are looking at the dollars and cents a fair bit, and then Michelle, any other thoughts that you have? You're on the LTFM piece of it, right?
Yeah. No,
I mean,
I
again,
don't have any thoughts.
Looks good. Thanks for all the hard work on it. This is,
Yes.
this is always a little kind of a
Yeah.
beast to get your arms around.
And with, with Blueprint 181, remember the last 4 years with the remodel going on, we've addressed a lot of our LTFM needs. There's still a lot of needs out there, and those are the needs that we populate in that 10-year plan. Obviously, we're looking ahead too, saying, hey, we put this roof on 20 years ago, and we know that that system typically lasts 20 to 25 years. We're trying to put a sticky note on that year to say, hey, I know this is gonna be $200,000. We're trying to best guess on some of those later out years. That's why those plans get flexible as they come closer and closer.
We got any money?
Pardon?
We got money
Well, that's a very broad question. Money for what?
for all these projects we're talking about?
There is money, there's funding available to fund more projects than we've had in years prior, yes.
After next year.
Yep, starting in fiscal year '26,
And that's because of that new classification?
because of the alt facilities funding resource that's available through MDE, correct?
So when I see the zeros, does that mean that those were in all these various categories? These are, were a lot of these categories addressed with Project Blueprint 181?
They're just categories that we've never had.
Okay,
used them.
okay,
Either we've never used them or don't qualify for some of them.
okay,
But they're part of the form.
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly.
so really the, under category 5 is the, kind of the bulk of what
You got it.
we're looking at, okay.
Yes, so for any project, whether it be HVAC replacement, roofing, electrical, like lighting improvements, anything like that, depending upon the type of project determines what bucket
Okay.
it falls underneath here. And so those are all MDE's process of how they fund things through LTFM. They said, hey, instead of each school district doing it differently, we're gonna standardize on how all the school districts apply for maintenance money for health and safety and environmental and facility fixes.
That makes
And
Yep.
instead of just one code, we had to
Right.
have all of these,
Right,
so
yeah.
they know what we're doing.
Yeah, okay.
Well, and I'll apologize, this is probably a fairly dumb question, but it'll be good for edification for those watching, listening, whatever. Is this the fund then that benefits from that additional, maybe talk a little bit about how our square footage increased and how that
Yep, so-
pumped us into a different, Reed says it better than I do.
Yeah,
Yep, okay, so for the largest school districts in the state, school districts with over 1.5 million square feet of facility, they typically, they have the opportunity to apply for this 1A funding. And what that, it's alt facilities funding. What it does is it allows the LTFM mechanism based on student enrollment numbers. They realize that the largest districts in the state, that funding mechanism is not really good, or it doesn't work really well for those types of districts. So when you get over 1.5 million square feet, which we're 1.556 somewhere in there, we're 50,000 square feet over. That helps those larger districts then be able to levy for the improvements that are needed to take care of the facilities. Versus having to go out and say, like a Crosby or a Pillager, which doesn't have the square footage we do, they would have to go out and say, we need a capital referendum in order to put, roofing and parking lots and technology into their facilities. So this funding mechanism, this 1A mechanism, allows us to do that internally and take care of those largest needs projects.
Thank you.
but that 1A funding is just for facilities.
Can only be used for LTFM projects, so health and safety, asbestos removal, electrical, mechanical, site projects like parking lots, roofing systems, building envelope, doors, windows, the shell of our facilities is really what it can be used for. Can't be used for anything else. Can't get teachers with this money.
Can we only qualify because of Blueprint 181?
Right. So thank you, community, for approving Blueprint 181. It gives us a little bit more funding.
Yep.
Okay, so 1A funding is just for facilities. Can only be used for facilities.
Can we only qualify because of Blueprint 181? Right. So thank you, community, for approving Blueprint 181. It gives us a little bit more funding. Yep.
Any other questions or comments or discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none. Those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Marcy. Thank you, Reed.
Kevin, can we have a 1 minute recess? All right, thanks.
Okay, we are recessed for looks like Director Donnelly has returned. We are back in session, and we will move on to our last action item of the evening, which is the approval of the resolution on the cell phone policy.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion from Director Donnellinger with a second from Director Ward to approve the resolution on the cell phone policy. Discussion.
It's all right.
Mr. Chair, I think that was Director Heidemann, wasn't it?
Yes.
There you go.
It's all right, though.
It's all right.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all
Director
right.
Heidman, yes, second.
We look quite similar. I'm a little short-handed, but that, he's,
Little
Trying to think if
shorter,
that's
too.
twice in a week I've heard that one now, or? No, it isn't. It's like 9 days. Okay, so motion from Director Donnellinger with a second from Director Heidman. Discussion. Again, just for the benefit of those that may not have read it, not the board, the intent of this resolution is to do two things primarily. The first is to demonstrate the board's commitment to what we've outlined in our new strategic plan, which is to create a safe and healthy learning environment for the kids. And as a result, at the policy committee level, we were looking at the student handbooks that we have, and there is language in every single student handbook for all of our facilities in the district regarding cell phone use in those facilities. To date, we really don't have issues with the enforcement of that in almost all of the facilities, the one glaring exception being Brainerd High School at the moment. So the purpose of this resolution was to demonstrate the board's desire to see that enforced, to buy us the time to create an updated cell phone policy that we will put into place when the students return from winter break in January. So part one of the resolution is to essentially direct Mr. Grant and the building site people to enforce the student handbook language at the beginning of the school year with the board's enthusiastic, resolute, and strong backing. And then secondly, to compel this board to have policy 524 worked on and ready to be reviewed at our October meeting, which is on October 21st. So just for the benefit of those that didn't want to have to read
Our
this
board
thing.
meeting in October is October 21st.
Yeah,
I thought September's the one we moved to.
both of them are later than usual. Also, thanks to Director Ross for taking this Frankenstein thing that I put together and making it look pretty. Thank you very much. So then, any further discussion?
I think what we also discussed, there was another policy out there that we were gonna try to.
Oh, yeah, we have
massage
there's a policy 540, which is a explicit MSBA model policy for cell phones. And then 524, as written, is a student policy around internet usage, and that's where the cell phone language that compels or drives the student handbook comes from. So as part of that, at policy committee meeting, we have a meeting on July 17th. As of right now, the intent is to essentially sunset 540 and just put all the meat into 524, so we don't have two policies saying the same thing, or worse, two policies conflicting with each other. Thanks for that note.
Mr. Chair, I just want to say, in regard to Mr. Olson's comments about the nice job that the policy committee did on this, I'm like DJ, I'm not a patient person either. I want to see it done yesterday, along with bullying done yesterday. But I'm really thankful that that the policy committee took the time to be more realistic in the process. And the goal is to, make sure that cell phones don't distract our education, and our students' education. So I'm glad, you really did a nice job. You guys really did, policy committee did a really nice job, and I appreciate that, just like Mr. Olson said, so.
Thank you.
Kudos,
Director Ward.
kudos.
What we're trying to do is we wanna make sure we have buy-in from all the parties.
Yep.
And we're not gonna get buy-in.
And that was sort of the
That's
realization we had at the committee
No,
table,
just-
was that we could get an updated 524 ready to roll by September 6th or whatever that day is. But it would be done without student voice being heard, without a really great chance to talk to teachers beyond, just their union representation, but that would have been about it. So, Director Heidman came up with the idea of delaying the actual implementation of the new policy till after winter break. I thought that was a super compromise.
So the intent of the policy committee is to combine 524 and 540 into one?
For all intents and purposes.
One.
Yep, 540 as a
Strong
policy
policy.
today is sort of ignored
Yeah,
anyway. It's,
well, it's not it doesn't have a lot of teeth and,
yeah.
okay.
I'm generally not a fan of managing performance expectations, especially of staff, if that's Peter's job through board resolution. But I think it works because it's our commitment to say that we're supporting that, and I think we need to do that with one voice. So the context for me works, but I'm generally not in favor of managing performance that way.
I would say your point is well taken. What I would say is, again, we had administrative staff representation at the committee table.
Yeah.
So in a perfect world, with more time, then this could have come from the superintendent's office. But instead of it trying to appear like the board's compelling this, it should be viewed as the board is supporting this. That the board has said through retreats, through individual comments, through everything that we've said, that all of us in some way, shape, or form are in favor of more cell phone enforcement based on the voluminous data that's starting to come out as it relates to other districts around the country that have begun to do these things. I haven't seen a single data point where this has resulted in negative performance, whether that's an increase in behavioral issues or a decrease in academic performance. No such data exists that I've found, and I've looked.
Right.
Doesn't mean it's not out there, but it means it would be the exception and not the rule. So I think that's the messaging is important. I think context is important, and the context is this. If there's a teacher watching, when you come into Brainerd High School on the first day of school and a kid pulls out the cell phone and you're concerned about what a parent might do, and that parent concern comes to fruition and they're in your face, give them my phone number. I will gladly take that phone call 7 days a week, twice on Sunday.
And his number is?
My number is on the website.
So in the limited time the policy committee has had to research cell phone policies, district cell phone policies, is it typical that it's a district-wide policy, or is it typically more building-wide?
It's both.
Okay.
So what think again in legislative terms. So what you're seeing, and probably the largest example would be the Los Angeles Unified School District now has done this. It'll go into effect when they go back to school this fall. So basically, think of 524 as an umbrella, just like we were talking about with the disciplinary stuff with 506. Same concept, it's broad strokes. This is what we're trying to achieve. These are the policy triggers for it. Now you have to come in underneath and write procedure and enforcement and all of those things and fill in the meat, because it's gonna vary at an elementary school versus Forest View versus the BLC versus, LEC and the high school. So it'll be, that's where we let the professionals come in and do that with. But the policy's intent is to give the letter of the law on what the intent is. And that's where I suspect over the next 2 meetings, we'll probably have some vigorous conversation about that. Because you have variables that have to be decided upon at the board level. Are we talking about a full day ban on cell phones, or are we talking about perpetuating what's on the books for the high school now, which is classroom only? So as of right now, the student is allowed to leave the classroom, pull out their cell phone, text, do whatever, until they get to the next classroom, and then the policy kicks back in again. We didn't talk to that level, so there hasn't been that level of discussion on where the 6 people at this table split up on that. And I, for one, want to see more data. I don't really have an opinion on it.
Okay.
I know what sounds good, but there's no data behind it, so it's just a feeling that I have.
Well, I know, Mr. Chair, when you make a policy and you have exceptions, that usually weakens the policy. That usually weakens the process of the policy, the follow-through in the policy. However, having said that, I've already had some educators tell me, in one building for sure, they use their cell phones for discipline behavior kind of situations or whatever as well. So there are gonna have to be some, and even in the IEPs, there's some students that need to have access to their cell phones for hearing loss or other impairments that these students have. So there are gonna have to be exceptions, and I think that that was wise also to look at these exceptions and try to make it as ironclad as possible, but with some flexibility, if that's possible.
So question, at this point right now, what we're doing, just so I'm clear on this, we're just voting that we're behind making a new policy, right?
That, and we're tying ourselves to a timeline to deliver an updated 524 based on the timeline and the
But right
resolution.
now at this meeting,
And we're asking the staff to.
we're getting
work it
off
out.
on these things that we're gonna talk about in the next meeting, or the
Correct.
meeting after that. So we probably just,
What this
Yeah, but I think from a
resolution,
transparency perspective, it's nice to have all this stuff on the table at the outset, so that, again, everybody but the 6 of us kind of know what we're thinking and talking about. I mean, because here's the reality of it is the timing is pretty good for us to do this. As they say, the first soldiers out of the trench get the best bullets, right? We're not the first ones out. There are districts that have come before us, and to John's point, they've discovered what exceptions work, which ones don't work, and what accommodations need to be made. There's gonna be best practices, or at least, preferred practices that seem to be working, instead of us just feeling around in the dark. So we have that going for us. I mean, it's, trailblazing is a little difficult sometimes. But yeah, that's all this is, if nothing else came out of this vote than us saying that we're gonna have, a reading of a policy on October 21st that we either like and we finalize it, or we send it back to the policy committee one more time so that we have it. Because our vision as a board was to have this communicated, articulated forcefully and uniformly by the time everybody leaves for winter break. So when everybody goes home, they know what they're coming back to.
that's a good idea.
No surprises, right?
Good plan.
But I think the biggest thing in there that maybe isn't stated expressly is that we, as a board and as an administrative team, we have the staff's back on this thing. That when the going gets tough, nobody gets thrown under the bus, that we're all standing shoulder to shoulder and saying, this is how this has to be. Not gonna be easy for anybody. I mean, the articles I've read on it says the first 2 or 3 weeks of it is a very difficult adjustment for everybody.
the other thing with this resolution, DJ, is that we want to make sure existing policy is adhered to.
I'm
And
fine with it, I just don't know why
Yeah.
we're starting to talk about IEPs and all these different things that's not part of what this is on the agenda.
I just think so the
agendas
public
for-
understands
for the
what's
resolution.
happening and
I
why.
understand, we're soapboxing, I guess, which is fine. I didn't know, I just was wondering, we're not gonna craft up this policy tonight. So before we start getting people's hopes up and stuff like that, we should wait till the policy committee, Peter and his team, you guys put together what you think, and then we're gonna have this discussion a few times.
Yeah, I mean, our involvement in this as a board is functionally closeted now until October, right? The policy committee will do its work. Peter and his team will do their work. Andrea Rusk and her team will do their work, and then we're gonna learn some things. And we may have to be nimble and pivot a little bit here and there while remaining consistent, which is perhaps a little bit contradictory. But the other thing is, it just needs to be, the point of the resolution, what we came to in the policy committee meeting was a resolution by its definition is 6 people saying, we all agree on this. Or, depending on how you vote, but yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Unanimity and consensus. Strong messaging, because I think,
I get it. I just
Fair
don't know
enough.
why we're starting to talk about all these other things, like exceptions.
because it's fun and we felt the meeting was gonna be too short.
Okay, let's get, I got a headache for the stop and truck.
Any further
Before
questions or
Advil.
discussion? The last thing I would say is I thank you to everybody on the policy committee. It was a fun and lively discussion. And I think we got to a good place where, we were kind of chasing our tails at the beginning of the meeting and we sort of figured it out. So it's pretty cool. All right, so hearing no further discussion, all those in favor? Oh, I've got a
Roll call, baby.
I had it all circled and everything.
Michelle Brecken,
Yes.
DJ Dunleer.
Yes.
Randy Heidman,
Yes.
Sarah Spear,
Yes.
John Ward,
Yes,
Kevin Boils.
Yes.
All in favor?
Motion carries. All right, then next up, we just have a few committee meetings as updates. Director Heidman, let's kick it to you for policy.
We already talked about it. So the only thing we talked about in that committee meeting was cell phone stuff, so, and we've already talked about it, so there's nothing to report on.
Okay.
Sorry.
And Director Ward, any other updates from finance?
we talked about some celebration successes, we talked about policy and legislative updates. We did reschedule the September 5th meeting to September 19th. The farm property proposal is still in play. Nothing decided on that. Carrie gave us a good synopsis of the ADSIS special ed funding. And Marcy gave us a good review of the compensatory review. And we did the handbooks, we did the, already tonight, we did the 10-year long-term finance facilities maintenance. That's it.
Great, thank you, Director Ward. All right, next up is Marcy with the business services report.
Right, so the financial report in the board packet, I was just gonna note that community service and OPEB are down a little bit compared to prior year, but no concerns there. Construction's up from prior year, and that's due to a better budget estimate. And then there will be no financial report in August because we are working on closing June. You guys won't get June's financial report until that's completely audited and final. And that's all I have, unless there are questions.
Questions for Director Lord? Look at you. Thank you very much, Marcy.
Thanks, Mars.
And now I feel like we should have like intro music. Like the old Johnny Carson music when he would come out at the beginning or something, but we'll turn it over
Who's gonna be
to,
Ed?
huh?
Who's gonna be Ed?
DJ.
Oh,
That's my vote.
What am I gonna do?
You're Ed McMahon.
No, I don't have a lot to say, other than I want to thank everybody for being so welcoming. You know, my brain got back into gear today, so to speak, on all the acronyms. Because, you know, when you're out for a little bit, you forget that stuff that doesn't matter anymore. But it's been a very, very smooth start from my perspective. I can't speak for anybody else, but we got a lot of work to do, though. And we have some really talented people who aren't afraid to work, which I feel really good about, because it's not one plow horse pulling a sled of, lumber all by itself. So for Carrie and Marcy and Reed and Kelly and all those people, and I don't want to leave anybody out, but I have, but this is going to be fun. You know, I remember I told you at the beginning, if I'm not having fun, this isn't worth it. Trust me. But we got a really good group of talented people, and I look forward to working with them and the board as well. A lot of work to do, but it's good work. It's not bad work. It's really, really good work. And in the end, I think we're going to be very successful. And I think the district's going to make a step forward. We're not holding water, and I'm not going to be a place card holder. I'm just telling everybody that right now. I didn't do this to be a place card holder. So we got things to do. We got people to move, make decisions, and we're going to get it done. We're going to meet your criteria of what needs to get done. And I feel good about where we're at. So there you are.
Thank you and welcome aboard once again.
Yes.
One week in and he's still here, so that's
Yeah.
good.
That could go both ways, you know.
And then I guess the next item, based on our last retreat, we decided not to do the roll call director updates. So I would say just point to me if you have something you want to close with, and I will recognize you and let you.
I already did.
Director Heidman.
The only thing I'm gonna say is, I am going to use a term that you coined, at least in my brain. Let's not interfere with what's going on in the classroom. That's the most important thing. And if something's interfering, we need to deal with it. And I'm all on board with that, because we're here to educate kids.
Right.
That's our main duty. So that's all I have.
Okay.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
So we have a motion from Director Donnellinger with a second from Director Ward for adjournment. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.